Hey y'all, I'm back with another Binespiration. So in case you don't know what I'm talking about, last week I posted a video regarding bringing back Binespiration, which is where I share my faith and applying it to real life in hopes that it's helping you some way, somehow in your walk in life, right? I always start with a disclaimer that I am not a scholar. I'm not a religious scholar or anything of the sort. I'm just a girl who loves God, and I'm breaking down the word to try to make it make sense for me. And you can use it in whatever way you want, and hopefully it helps your life as well. So getting back to it, last week I spoke about 1 Samuel chapter 15. And just to give you a quick recap of that, again, you could watch the full video from last week on my Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you feel like watching it, and you can get the whole breakdown of that. But just quickly to catch you up to where we're going today, the book of Samuel is where God first starts to elect kings, right? Samuel is actually the last judge of Israel. Israel is a people of the Jewish faith, as you probably know it today. So this is back in the day, obviously biblical times, where God is sort of, the people are wrestling with God in terms of their faith and what they're believing and what they're following, right? And so they get to a point where they're like, God, we need a king. And God is, highly offended by that because God is the king, right? And so the people are sort of like going back and forth with sinning and repenting, as we all are in life. And they get to the point where they're like, okay, we need a king. God gives them a king. Samuel is a prophet, a seer. He is the one who hears from God, elects this king, Saul. Saul kind of doesn't follow what God is saying to the T, even though Saul looked the part, even though the people received Saul as a king. Saul ended up not walking the walk in the way that he needed to. So God rejects Saul, cancels him. And now, even though Saul is still on the throne, essentially, God is saying to Samuel, we need a new king. And so now we're in chapter 16 of 1 Samuel. And God is giving Saul some directions on how to get a new king, or who to select for a new king. So Samuel's like a little bit concerned now because, although he's a prophet, the people listen to him and everything like that. Saul is king, and now Saul is cut off from God. So Saul is just out here wilding out, right? Completely. And so Samuel is like, God, I'm a little bit concerned because now if I go find another king, Saul might kill me, right? So he's concerned. And God tells him, don't worry about it, I got you, right? And this is a theme in the Bible. So I've been sort of over the past few months going straight through, like from Genesis. And if you don't know the layout of the Bible, that's like 1, 2, 3, 4. We're about 8 books in or something like that. And so a theme from the beginning, it has always been God telling people, go and do this outrageous thing that's outside of you, that's super courageous, right? And every single person is like, oh my God, I can't do this, right? So he tells Abraham to leave his land and go to the land where I'm going to bring you, right? And Abraham's like, okay, but he does it and he obeys and God works it out, right? He tells Noah to build the ark and there's no rain, right? There hadn't been rain. And, but the people of the land were sinning and all that. And God's like, listen, I'm about to cancel everybody. Okay, everybody's got to go. And so because of that, I need you to do this thing. Noah does it, right? But besides Noah, there was somebody else. Moses, God told Moses to go to Pharaoh and try to set the people free because Israel were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. And Moses had to go back several times. But each time these people were like, God, I can't do this. Like, I'm not able to do this. In their heart, they were scared, right? More so Moses than the other examples that I gave. But God every single time said, I will be with you. I will go before you. I will fight your battles. I will deliver your enemies into your hand. I got you, right? So if one thing's for certain and 2 things for sure, if God asks you to do something, tells you to do something that you feel like, I'm not even equipped for this, like I can't do this on my own, God is always going to be with you. He's always going to go before you. He's always going to set the stage. He's always going to order your steps. He's always going to set the scene. Whatever it is that you need, it's already going to be supplied. So don't ever think that because God asked you to do something and you don't feel like you're the person for the job. I'm here to tell you that if God asks you to do it, then you're the person for the job. So hear this. In 1 Samuel 16, he says that I am sending you to Jesse, Jesse is actually within the lineage of Jesus. And I know there is a place where I can find this. Let me see if I can find it real quick for y'all. So in Ruth 4, it tells us who the lineage of Jesse, basically. So Jesse, let me see. I'm trying to look at for somebody who y'all would know, but y'all ain't gonna know. I don't know if y'all gonna know anybody in this line. So Perez, Hezron, Aminadab, Boaz. You probably heard about Boaz, Obed, and then Jesse, and then Jesse fathered David, which we're gonna get to, right? And David is, or I should say Jesus is from the lineage of David, right? So anyways, God tells Samuel that I'm sending you to Jesse in Bethlehem because I selected a king for myself. And that part right there already got me, because I'm like, wow, God said I selected him for myself. And sometimes we think that, like I was saying, we're not good enough, we're not equipped enough, we're not the person for the job. And that's because we're looking at the outer, right? We're looking at the world, we're looking at people, we're comparing ourselves to other people. But God is not saying that I'm selecting him for the people. He said I selected him for myself. So if God is selecting him for himself, then there's no way that we could say that he is not the person, to do what God has called him to do. And it's not for y'all, it's for him, right? And so he says he's selecting a king for himself. And he gives him particular instructions on what to do. And he says, go, and then I will tell you the rest when you get there, right? And that's so typical of when God gives us messages, that we're to go, we're to follow, and he's going to guide us along the way. Like I said, he's going to go before you. He's going to order your steps. He's going to be there. He's going to be the fourth man in the fire, right? So he says, I'm gonna give you the instructions when you get there. So anyways, Samuel blesses Jesse, blesses his sons, and Jesse starts to bring his sons forward. So I don't think he tells him, I'm here to find a king, but he's like, I believe that there's an anointed one among your sons. So Jesse starts to bring his, first son. So the first son he bring is Aminadab. And Aminadab is, presented to Samuel, and Jesse's like, nah, that's not who he selected. Not Jesse. Jesse's the one who brought his son forward. Samuel's like, no, that's not who he selected, right? So the Lord hasn't chosen him either. So Jesse presents his next son, Shammah, but that wasn't the one either, right? And all along, Samuel is wrestling with this because he's like, oh yeah, this gotta be the one, right? Because each son that Jesse presented, they're part of Israel's army, right? Or the military. And so you would imagine they're young, strapping gentlemen, right? They're giving real king energy, right? They look like they would fit the part to be king, right? From the outward. But God says something very interesting here to Samuel. He says, do not look at his appearance or his stature. Again, stature, that means that there's stature to be looked at, right? Because I have rejected him. Humans do not see what the Lord sees, for humans see what is visible, but the Lord sees the heart. And I thought that was important, because oftentimes we think that because we don't look the part, that we're not good enough, because we may not be glamorous, right? Or we are glamorous. We may not be big enough. We may not be strong enough. We may not be fit enough, right? You don't, have what the everyday person has. Or maybe you do, and that's a wrong fit for the thing that you're trying to do, right? And so this tells us that God is not does not care about that. He doesn't care about the outside. He doesn't care about the shiny things. He doesn't care about, you know, even the dullness of it all, right? So Moses had an issue because Moses stuttered, and Moses was like, God, I'm not the one to be, you know, speaking for the people. And God provided for him. He provided his brother, who was a better speaker, Aaron, who was able to speak for him until Moses was able to do these things on his own, right? But it seems like God is always choosing the underdog. And I don't want to give away the next part, but it just seems like that. And so even though it doesn't look like what you think it should look like, what you think the person who's supposed to do the thing that you think that you're supposed to do, even though you don't think that you look like that, doesn't mean that you're not equipped, right? I always think about how people rise to a level of success and we might look at them and say, oh, that's how you do it, right? But then there may be other people who rise to the same level of success doing it completely different. So like, for instance, Oprah, she had her, I think she was on a talk show or on the news at 19, and then she had a show at 22, and then eventually she got the Oprah Winfrey Show and she was 25, and then she spent 25 years there, and now she's, you know, like a mogul and whatnot. Nobody has ever done it the way that Oprah has done it, right? To get to, you know, having the level of success that she's had. However, many people have gotten to success, right? In many different ways. So there's no way that it really looks, you know what I mean? Like, we think that in our limited view of things, because we're on the inside and we're looking outwards and we're comparing and we're like, I don't have this, I don't have that. We're always looking at what we don't have, but we're not looking at the uniqueness that we do have, that God gave us a unique, special something that is just us, right? So Jesse's showing all these sons that he has that are giving this king energy, and they look very kingly, and you know, they look like the people who we would choose. But God is like, no, that's not who it's going to be. And Saul, also the king that was currently in place at the time, was also accepted by the people as king. He did give that, you know, same effect that, wow, this is somebody we could choose as king. And God is saying, well, I'm not doing that anymore. In this phase, I'm looking at the heart. I am looking at the person who actually, according to me, is equipped to do it. Because in any event, all of the people who were selected, nobody was able to do anything without God, right? Even Saul, once God turned his face from him, it was like he was powerless and he wasn't able to do anything. And actually, a part that I didn't cover, it says that he was tormented, right, in his mind. He had an evil spirit that was tormenting him, so he couldn't even act. And so, actually, I didn't get to that part yet, but that's what happens. So when God is not with you, it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter how fancy, if you check all the boxes, right? Because how many times do we see people rise and we see people fall? So it doesn't matter if you don't have God. I mean, you could try it, but it's just not gonna be successful, right? And so, I mean, that could be debated, but live long enough, you'll see. As you go through life, you try to do it with God and you try to do it without God, you're going to see that it really does not work without God. I don't care who you are and I don't care what you say. And that's on period. So now Jesse is providing all of his sons. So he provides all seven of his sons. And, Samuel's like, yeah, it's none of these, because God told him, yeah, it's none of these. And he's like, so you don't have another son? There's nobody else? And so he said, I do have another son, but he's tending to the sheep, right? He told him. So Jesse went, he sent him, and he comes, and God is like, yes, this is him. This is David. And it says that he had beautiful eyes and healthy, handsome appearance. I don't even know why they said that, but that's what we know about David, that David was indeed that guy, right? So David is now, in Saul's court because he is now anointed by Samuel. He's going to be the next king. The interesting thing about David is that he was 14 years old. So he's just a little kid, and God is like, yeah, this guy is king. So could you imagine had that been us, we're 14 years old, and God, out of all these people, is like, no, you're the one who's king. So it doesn't even look like what it is, right? It doesn't even look possible. And that is one of the things that is so common, is that it's always gonna look impossible. And I feel like that's sort of God's hallmark. That's his calling card. Like, I'm gonna do what's impossible, what looks impossible, so that you know that it was me, right? So that you can't take credit for it when it happens, because it was so impossible. It was so outside of the realm of what anybody would have thought was able to happen, that it has to be me, right? But we still end up doubting, right? We still end up doubting because oftentimes we look at ourselves and we look at our own limitations, and we look at, again, like, what is it that we don't have, because we're not relying on the power that we can't see, that is backing us up, that is pushing us, that's going before us, that's making a way. We can't see it. We don't know, God's plan. But what we can know for sure is that he's going to be with us, that he's going to set the stage, he's going to be along the way, right? And so I told you that Saul, the king that was in place, had sort of a spirit, right? I don't know what y'all want to do with that. He had an evil spirit. He was being tormented. And the crazy thing about this is that it says that the spirit that was sent to Saul was sent by God, right? Because Saul was obviously in disobedience. And I don't really know what to say about that, right? I don't really know where to put that, except that God used Saul's disobedience to set David up, right? And so we can say that, what is that God will use all things. And however it is that he has to put you in position, he will put you in position. So what happened was Saul had this spirit about him, and he could not, do what he needed to do. So Saul was looked for somebody. His servants told him that, I could find you someone who can help you with this evil spirit, right? And so he said, I know a guy. He plays the lyre, which is an instrument, sort of like a mini harp, and he can help you with this spirit. So they find David, who's the person, and David comes and plays the instrument for Saul. And when he plays the instrument for Saul, Saul feels better, right? The spirit leaves him. And look at that. So now David not only has already been anointed king, and Saul doesn't know this, but now he got an internship, right? To walk in this kingship. So even though Saul is not the person, Saul is the adult in the room, right? And he's able to actually be in that position as king at his big age. And now David has the opportunity to learn from Saul, right? Whatever good he could learn. So God causes Saul to notice David, and David loved him. Saul loved David very much, right? So that just goes to show you that David was the least likely to succeed. And God made him king, right? He chose him out of obscurity. Jesse didn't even select him out of all of the sons that he had. He was like, he brought out all 7 sons and was like, yep, that's it, And all this time, David was there. So I say that to say that even sometimes your family might even count you out. Your family might even think that you're not the one. Your family might even think that you're the least likely to succeed, or you're not the man for the job, or you're not the woman for the job. But that doesn't matter. If God thinks that you are, then you are. And sometimes we have to put on our horse blinders, and we have to put on our earmuffs and do our thing regardless of what anybody thinks, whether we got it or don't got it, right? That's not the point. The point is that if God asked you to do it, and if God called you to it, then you are equipped for it, no matter what anybody say. It doesn't matter if it's your mother, your sister, your brother, your best friend. It doesn't matter. If God said it, then it is so. Even though I'm talking about it from the perspective of us not believing that we're good enough for whatever it is that we're called to do, David actually did not have that same energy, right? David was pretty confident in himself. And we're going to see in the next chapter 17 how confident David was in himself. So stay tuned and join me next week for another episode of Binespiration.